Välkommen to Forfällignes belysning. A show dedicated to aligning a journey to a better mental health using the understandings of the ancient Norse. Join us each weekday morning at 7 a.m. Alaska time. Someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiance, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering, a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them. Look at that.
God Morgen, and happy Tears Day to you. Today we celebrate the Norse god Tyr and the courage to be ourselves. Before we get started today, thank you for all of you who have liked, followed, and subscribed. If you haven't got a chance, please feel free to do so. You do so on any of the video channels, any of the audio channels, and as always, my friends and family at New Reality TV. newrealitytv.com is a streaming channel dedicated to the plethora of perspectives of the spiritual realm that may provide for us that piece of the intellect, that may give us that step forward, that may restore our faith in what we know, what we believe, and how we can move forward. If you are interested in me, my message, my teachings, my shows, my books, all of that, including my life coaching services, you can check those all out at norsewhispers.com. And of course, for coaching, just /coaching. For you who may have a few extra coins and want to donate to a good cause, by all means, feel free to hit up the donation site at pay.akulfhednar.com. There you can donate as much as you'd like or as little. Just every little bit goes to helping our electronic platform and certainly our travel throughout the countries, helping people to obtain and maintain that mental space. So today we're talking about courage, and we're talking about embracing courage to see and be yourself. Many people seem to find conflict when looking back on their lives and seeing lessons that they've obtained and experiences they've had that may or may not present in the best way for them. And so there's pain associated with it. There may be uncomfort. There may be just a desire to kind of leave that in the past. But what we fail to remember is a lot of these experiences that we're having in this reality are really about teaching us emotional control, teaching us emotional understanding, and certainly teaching us a methodology at which to move forward in our lives, to grow, to evolve. And so having to look back on those previous experiences and learn from them is, although painful, it's usually very beneficial. What I find in many cases of the people that I work with and helping them to discover what it is that's kind of holding them back or creating this underlying trigger in their modern day life is that they have experiences in their past that have some emotional energy connected to it. And looking back, or actually looking forward to tomorrow, where we'll be talking about wisdom. Wisdom is kind of this double-edged sword, if you will. While the idea of wisdom is essentially building this interconnect between a multitude of intellects and knowledge and certainly these emotions. This interconnect, which also provides, the energy and certainly the imagery for imagination, has some level of emotional energy. So we may experience one thing, and because of this emotional interconnect with another piece of, with another experience, another memory, we find emotional energy being generated that we really weren't expecting. And this, many people kind of experience this as modern day psychology calls it a trigger. And so what this is that our experience, because of this interrelativity to another particle of energy stored in memories, and this other particle now having this energy charge with it, that when this makes the connection, of course, it brings back that emotional energy and brings that into the processing, into the thought processing, and certainly into the emotional processing that we're going to do for each experience. This is, many people experience this in everyday life. And it really can be unsettling, problematic when we're talking about social circles and trying to get through our lives. So when we're thinking about embracing this understanding of the god Tyr represents a courage. For those of you not familiar with the lore, he, of course, was the god who was willing to put his hand in the mouth of the giant wolf Fenrir, that Fenrir would accept the chains forged by the dwarves to hold him in place as to not create chaos long enough for all of life. Of course, these chains will now hold him until Ragnarok, right? So the Fenrir is kind of chained in place, and Fenrir made the requirement that for him to accept this next test chain that the dwarves have made, that one of the gods that were gathered there must put his hand in the mouth of Fenrir. Well, Tyr, of course, being the god of justice and law, knew that the wolf had to be secured, had to be kind of boxed in there, and so he willingly volunteered to do that, of which Fenrir immediately bit off his hand. And seriously, he knew it. He knew it was going to happen. Tyr was by no means dumb, so he knew Fenrir was going to do this, and because Fenrir couldn't help himself. I mean, he is a destructive force of nature. And so he knew it was going to happen, and sure enough, it did. But he was willing to do this, and he volunteered very readily. So Fenrir, of course, did what Fenrir does and bit off his hand. In much the same way, we have to look at our lives and look past these experiences of pain and determine what, if anything, the value of the emotional energy connected to the memory has in our current life, right? So it may have been very painful and very uncomfortable in our past, but that doesn't mean that by its very nature, it's going to be as destructive, as problematic in our current life. As an example, a little self-reveal for those of you who have followed the show, but in 1989, which was a very long time ago, 1989, I overdosed on heroin. I had been on a 10-year bender, and following the separation of my parents and through a whole tour in the military, I had been a pretty heavy drug user. And in August, September-ish time frame, I had just hit an all-time low and overdosed. Well, there were a lot of emotional energies tied to that area in my life. They were very destructive. They were very, I went through a long period of understanding who I was, what I was. Probably why I was, right? I think we all go through this. But as I look back on it now, I realized that I needed to understand that path of destruction to get to where I am today. Where now I can talk with other people and say, hey, I was on that path of destruction, and this is what I felt, and this is why I felt it. And looking back on it now, I probably have very different memories than maybe even 5, 10, 15 years ago. Why? Because I'm growing, evolving, changing, and I'm learning to decouple the energy particles from the memory itself. And as I look back, I could sink into a mindset of looking back at those times and go, yeah, I was a real failure. And man, I just zero value. I could subscribe to that. Or I can say, I learned from that, decoupling that energy. I learned from that. I've grown from that point. And so now I can become a beacon for others, right? I can talk with others who say, yeah, I'm a real failure, and I don't like myself. All of these things, all of these same things that I went through during that time. So a lot of times when we're looking back on these experiences in our lives, they may be uncomfortable, and we may say, and we could find ourselves being drawn, right? Drawn to that mindset, that thought process, that emotional energy. And this is really where the strength of mind comes into play, where we're going to look at it and go, all right, whoa. Yes, I went there. Yes, I was there. But I've grown since then. I've evolved since then. I've learned since then. I've changed since then. And now, again, I have this view, this alteration. Instead of allowing it to trigger, now, if I got into a situation where I was interacting with someone who was a heavy user, and they were absolutely convinced that this is the answer, and this is the way forward, and they were just browbeating me. Could I be lured back into that life? And the answer is no, because today I don't see a value in it. There's no value for me there. I don't need to discredit myself. I don't need to undermine myself. I can be me, just me. I don't have to fit into this societally acceptable role. I can just be me. I'm happy there, right? So learning to decouple this emotional energy from an experience that we have in our memory is a very critical key to maintaining a better mental space. Now, as you may recall, within the thought process, part of what we process through every experience is one of two things. The first thing being this mood, this emotional mood that we're in, our emotional state. When we are in a particular mood, our optic nerve, the part that makes your eyes work, another nerve that makes your ears work, all of these sensory inputs can be altered based on the mood. So if you're in a bad mood, they're going to alter the sensory input. If you're in a good mood, they're going to alter the sensory input. And you can physically, take a picture and literally Photoshop things out of the picture because of the mood you're in. So it's going to alter the energy that these imagery or this, these sounds, smells, tastes, touches, it can alter that sensory input so that what you process is technically not what happened, but that's the way you saw it, right? The second thing that's going to happen in that process is that there's this other energy field that's kind of pushing another additional alteration to the imagery being created, and that is imagination. Imagination is part of everything we see. Our brain kind of sets an imagination, data. It kind of sets it forward so that we're prepared. This is more or less kind of the fight or flight thing coming into the thought process, where we're preparing ourselves for whatever happens. Right? We're kind of our brain is trying to set us up for, should this be something that we need to fight or flight, we're kind of prepared. We're ready for it. And that's what imagination does. This is why haunted houses, for many, work. They work because our brain is imagining stuff there, particularly out there in the unknown, what's going to happen in this house. We're preparing our brain for that. And we're preparing to go immediately to this fight or flight, whatever it's going to be. So we're kind of prefacing that. So that's what imagination is going to do. Well, what imagination does, or winds up doing, is it's going to submit additional energy with each experience we have through our sensory input, right? So each time we're processing an image, something that we see, we're processing it through those two pieces that will alter the image at which we take in. And it happens all the time, right? Every experience. I call a present that micro sliver of time between the experiences that we have had and the experiences that we haven't. Thank you. I am fine. Thank you for Stephanie Carter. Thank you. Thank you for joining. When we think about the emotional value of that stored memory and how it's going to affect the way we see the world, the way we experience everything, whether it be emotions that we're trying to emit and or receive from significant others, relationship type of situation, or whether it be just in the general population, if we're out in public and we're receiving and sending. When I was much younger, I discovered that I had empathic abilities. I could feel the emotional states of others. Now, back then, I didn't know what it was, and it confused me. I fought with it for a really long time because I didn't understand it. So all of those things. And what I've discovered now, of course, is being an emotional empath, is that as I go out in public or I'm in large crowds, particularly in large crowds, I'm kind of I can become overwhelmed with this emotional energy. Why? Because in some cases, remember, I may have triggers back there. I may have these emotional energy particles that are attached to memories, and with large crowds, poof, they're kind of resurfaced all over again. So I have to be cognizant of being in large crowds, being in a mall, being in a large store. Lots of people, and again, they all have emotional states. And again, I'm receiving that all the time. So I just have to be cognizant of that. Well, I'm not unique by any stretch of the imagination. I'm about as normal as you get. The only thing that you could say as a little abnormal is, given the amount of goofiness that I've done in my life, the fact that I'm still here to tell you about it that's really unique. That's really exciting. And I'm glad I'm here. More importantly, I'm glad you're here to see me here. Anyway, my point is understanding these energies in the processing of our day, the processing of the experiences that we have on this realm at this time, is something that can help us to better obtain and maintain our mental space. All right? So I'm going to take a real quick break. When I come back from break, I want to talk about and look at ways that you and I can recognize this energy, manage this energy, and be able to use it to our benefit to give us that better mental space, to give us that cushion, to kind of give us a little space to where we can process what we need to process at the rate we need to process and not get overwhelmed. All right? So we're going to be back in a real quick second. We'll be right back.
The air. The time is now.
We're all waking up.
We're waking up.
We're all waking up.
It's all shifting.
New vibrations.
It's you.
It's you.
It's me.
It's all of us.
Together.
A new time.
A new day.
A new energy.
A new energy.
New reality.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
newrealitytv.com.
All right. Hey, and we are back, and thank you so much for taking that quick minute. As always, my friends and family at New Reality TV. Beautiful plethora of spiritual perspectives that hopefully can help whatever is currently ailing you. All right. So today we're talking about the Norse god Tyr. More importantly, we're talking about the courage of the Norse god Tyr and what he represented in our everyday life. The courage to see through some of these emotional energies that we've stored from our previous experiences, stored in memory. All right. So we're looking at that and we're deciding, hey, wait a minute, what am I going to keep and what am I going to lose, right? If I store this emotional energy with my past experiences, what value does that provide for me? Now, we've talked in the beginning of the show, we were talking about how we're using, or the brain uses, our imagination to kind of set the stage for a fight or flight kind of situation. So if we had to go, drop of a hat, our brain is kind of preparing us using the energy of imagination. It's going to kind of set the stage for that. Now, the downside to that is sometimes that imagination is connected to energies within our memories that may be more emotionally charged than not. And so what we have to do is, firstly, we have to understand who we are. And this is a very age-old concept of understanding who we are, where we are at. That helps or prevents or does something to the energy that we're creating every experience. So, thinking about who we are, and we've talked about in the past, for those of you who have followed the show, there's a part of the thought process that works on every experience that we have in this reality, where we're attaching emotional energy. And what's going to happen is we're going to pass a signal through this area of values, virtues, belief systems, deep understandings, those types of foundational pieces. We're going to pass energy through, of which each of those pieces are now going to provide some level of energy to this stream. So a stream may go in with, just a little bitty straw, and then by the time it comes out, it's this great big thing. Why? Because we've added a bunch of energy particles to the stream. That energy stream then is converted from energy, from bioelectricity within the physical form. It's converted to biochemistry. That biochemistry is then passed through the bloodstream, perks up to the top, comes up to the top, where it's reconverted back into energy. This allows the heart, or our emotional state, to provide a level of energy with the experience. It's all part and parcel of being human. When it's converted back into energy, what's converted back in energy is what got put into the biochemistry. Now, in addition to the biochemistry that our heart created with this experience, we're also going to pass in anything that happens to be in the bloodstream. So if we're one of those people where our pH balance is off a little bit, that affects our biochemistry. If we happen to have imbibed a lot of alcohol, that's going to affect our biochemistry being created and interpreted, right? Because it's going to be harder to pass with the level of alcohol, or maybe even some other intoxicant, obviously drugs and anything that's going to alter your frame of mind is always going to have some effect on our emotional state, our emotional energies being passed, and the interpretation therein. So we have the interpretation into biochemistry, and then the interpretation back out of biochemistry. And both of those are going to be affected by this alteration of the chemical composition of your body. So whatever that looks like. Now, over a period of your lifetime, your body gets kind of used to this, and it understands it, right? So we say, oh, we received this chemistry composition, and although we know your pH balance is off, so we're going to subtract that out of the equation, and what we're left with is this emotional energy that's now created based on the actual biochemistry. So your body can adjust, right? And it'll do that over a period of time. This is what your teenage years, your late primary years, and your teenage years into about your mid-20s is all about. It's about establishing I call it the recipe card of our chemical compositions that we create, that our brain recognizes then as a feeling, as an emotion, right? So that's all going to happen, all for every experience. So just because you were, feeling depressed or sad in this experience, as soon as we get to the next one, you could be in a totally different place, and that's good. Always looking towards the brighter piece. So, our steps for today, as we celebrate and embrace the Norse god Tyr, representative of courage in our lives, we're going to look at who we are. What are our values? Why? Why do we believe that value? Why do we embrace it so tightly? More importantly, how many memories now are connected or associated with that value? So if that value were to change, right? Remember, change is a big agent within our lives. So if that value changed, or the experience is showing us a different way to look at that value, as an example, what does that mean for your overall mental balance? Have we just undermined by taking out the footing of one of the main pillars, or is it just something that we can do without? Again, identifying who you are identifying those values, the beliefs, the reasonings, all of those things within the self is the best way to start understanding how this energy that you're absorbing every minute of every day, how it's going to affect you. And to be able to come to a place where you can become predictive of your emotional state. So if you're walking into a situation that you know is going to, I don't want to be there, maybe it's time we find something else to do. So all of those parts are all part of learning to control our emotional state. Learning to control our emotional state allows us to then control our mental health because we've now got a little bit of space. All right. And we can think our way through this. All right. So today we're celebrating Tyr, the Norse god of courage, as well as justice and law. We're going to take a time today, hopefully, where we can just sit by ourselves, do some meditative practices, just think about what are your beliefs and why do you believe them? Why are you so strong in this belief? And there are no wrong answers. There's no wrong answers here. You have to know who you are. It doesn't matter anyone else's bar. I can't tell you, you will be that. No. You will believe that. No. What you need to understand is why you are the way you are. No one else's measuring stick matters. You are a unique individual. You've had different experiences. You've had different chemical compositions. You've had different energies. You've had different environments. You're a different person. So be you. So let's spend some time today in what I call intrinsic reflection, looking inside, looking at those values and identify what they are. Identify how they're affecting the way you think. Because the way you think is the way you behave. The way you behave is the way you socialize. The way you socialize is how included you put into your emotional state. So it's all interconnected. I wish you the very best Tears Day. We will celebrate again tomorrow as we embrace the wisdom of Odin, the Norse god, the All-Father, as we look at the experiences and the parts and pieces that are necessary for wisdom and what that really means in our everyday life. So we'll look at that tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Alaska time. We will see you there. And until then, I wish you the very best Tears Day. Love and light.
Watching Ulfhednar's Belly Snake, a special production of Whispers of the Norse. Brought to you by the Alaska ulfhednar in South Central Alaska. Guidance and wisdom, courtesy of an ancient Celtic Norse shaman. Thank you so much for joining us today.